Hey guys, Kapper here. It's March 8th, 2019, and I'm on a mission to go look at a property in Kentucky. We're looking at plan, we always look at plan A, B, C, D, and E, and I'm not going to get into the whole plans at this point, but since Project 211 is on the way out, we kind of need another investment for the mortgage interest, which, if you guys don't really know how that works, is pretty much all mortgage interest you can write off. Okay, and in our situation, we don't have kids anymore, we don't have deductions, we don't have a big business to throw money into. So these land investments, so let's just say we pay $30,000 a year in mortgage payments. Okay, let's say you got a $2,000 or $2,500 mortgage, you pay $30,000 a year, so you can deduct that on your taxes in most cases. Then that usually saves us about $10,000 or $12,000 a year in income taxes. So you do the math. If we just kept our money, we'd be paying another $10,000 or $12,000 at the end of the year in income taxes. Now, I don't know about you, but for me, I'd rather be paying ourselves doing things we love to do out in the woods. So in essence, basically, we're only paying 2/3 of what it's really cost, or 3/4, depending on the breakdown, but we're only paying 2/3 of what the land actually costs based on the tax savings. So anyways, exciting. Let's check out this little road trip in this Kentucky beautiful cabin in the woods. It's 193 acres and it's beautiful. Okay, I'm starting to get close, so I'm looking at the houses and farms around here, looking for real junk stuff. There is a fair bit of trash in the ditches, although, it is almost spring, so it's probably what has collected over all winter. And so far, I haven't seen any real trashy places. Matter of fact, that on this stretch now, there's not hardly any garbage at all. So usually that's an indicator where the garbage usually ends and starts. That's usually a good indicator of who the heck is throwing it out, because I've seen that at several of our places. All right, so here's the road that I'm turning on.
Continue on Needmore Olney Road for 1.5 miles.
And down here, there's very, very little trash on the road. Very little. There's a nice sign that says, "You will be prosecuted." There's an old house there for trespassing. Okay, so we're getting close to this farm now. This is the dead-end road that it's on. But you do want to pay attention to the surrounding properties, because they can make or break a big investment.
Continue on CR 1040 for 1/2 mile.
Oh, the culvert's blown out right here. Oh, right there. Somebody's got to squawk at the county to fix that. You could tell it's been heavily cut on both sides, the woods. Okay, so dead-end roads are a double-edged sword. They're great for your privacy, but think of where people want to go to get away when they're partying and stuff. They'll go down these dead-end roads and they'll do their partying and littering and all of that stuff too. So you want to pay attention to signs along the road, for litter, for car tracks and things like that. No garbage here. There's a road to the left here that just went in with no gate or anything. It could be that food plot, possibly. if I'm far enough on the road, which it looks like I might be. Now I'm looking on the left here, there's some trash in the woods, which is on this farm, along with a deer standing right next to the trash. Okay, when you're looking at farms like this, you're always going to have some kind of trash on it. Usually there's an old dump pit or something. As long as it's not like the road dump and it not looking fresh like people are using it. Usually the trash is an advantage if you're not afraid of it, because it's usually no big deal to clean it up. But some people don't like to look at it, and it turns them off right away from looking at a property. Got some posted signs on this place, it looks like, on the left. Got purple. Yeah, so there was no trash on the road all the way to back here, which that's a good sign. So this is the driveway going into the cabin. You just saw there was one gate at the end of the road, although that's kind of right in front of your yard here, if you will. But the cabin is set back off the road quite nicely, and it's a really, really pretty place. We're going to get into what to look for in the building and the land here in just a minute. Let me finish the ride all the way in. Ooh, potholes. So there it is right there. Okay, the noise test. I could hear, it's got central air, unless that's a heat pump. Okay, the noise test is another important one for me. You'll see as we drive around the property, I'll have them turn off the side-by-side and listen. As you'll find out, there's going to be something that comes up here that you have to decide if you want to deal with or not. Okay, the heat pump just went off. So now here's the sound test. Here comes Mark. Here's a rocky, rough trail right below the house. Right there. I mean, when the dogs ain't barking, it's really quiet. And I mean, they do quit. Yeah, you can make a huge lake if you went straight across with this one, but the spillway is over there. This is not really big enough for fish. Could be, probably. And we're right below the house. We're heading in the direction of the dogs. Again, all right.
We're going to come back up the power line, go by the house, hit this food plot, and we're going to turn and go down into the timber, come back up, hit this food plot, hit the county road again, and then head back to the house.
All right. Okay, look on the right. There's a really nice mix of regeneration, pines and oaks. That's a great mix, great habitat for wildlife. But highlines, you're always going to have at least one highline for the most part to get power to your property on these places. Other places you might have a crisscross, because you might have a transmission line and a highline. They're not always the worst. There's a lot of advantages. There's a few disadvantages. But just be prepared, you will have some highlines. Flash flooding, yay! Yay! We need more rain. Anybody with me on that? Alright, so when you are driving through the woods, there's actually a lot of things you want to pay attention to. The first thing is the terrain. You know, how easy is it going to be for you to get around the property? And is there a road system in place? Or do you have to try to make one? And in areas where there isn't a road system, you have to look at the terrain and see what it is. Like if it's all rocky and hardwoods, you're gonna need, a big dozer and an excavator to make a decent road system. If it's really steep up and down, you're gonna need big machines to make a good road system. You could, but this is fantastic cover here. This reminds me of my other Kentucky farm that we had. Okay, so this was one of the food plots that the owner had on the property, and I look for where I can make them larger if need be. Being that it's in western Kentucky, all of Kentucky, you got different hills and different grades, so you can't just cut food plots where you want them. You have to look for flat areas. So this food plot could be made much larger in this location where it's at. However, as I just pointed out, there's a lot of really good cover around it. But as long as you know you have the option to, hey, I can make a big destination plot in the future. So you have to factor that in at all of these properties, because walking around on anything more than 10 acres just isn't feasible. Another thing you want to look for in the woods, you look kind of on the left here, it seems really, really open because it has been cut. The timber's been cut probably 10 to 15 years ago. And you also want to look at what kind of forestry mix you have, Is it a nice mix of hardwoods and pines? Is it all more kind of junk wood? Can you see neighboring houses? And looking into winter is really a good time. To me, it's better than summer for that reason. Can you see 3 different houses from different areas on your property? And then you got to think, well, if I'm sitting in a deer stand, do I want to be sitting there watching a neighbor's 5 dogs run around and hearing them out there, opening, closing doors or not? So there's a lot of things while you're cruising around that you want to pay attention to when you're looking at the actual property itself. Okay, and another important aspect is road frontage. Road frontage is a double-edged sword. But I don't like road frontage. I'd rather have 0 and a dead-end road dead ending right at our property. So this one actually has road frontage on 2 sides, and this is one of the sides we're driving. This is actually a county road, and on the other side it's that gravel road. It's not the entire property lines, but that's something you need to be aware of. To me, when you got too much road frontage, you kind of lose acreage. So your acreage starts laying out small if you got too much road frontage. But if you ever want to cut it up in the future, it might be worth it for you to have more road frontage. Okay, and we stopped here, and I had him turn the machine off so I could hear things. And you want to try to find like the corners of the property if they're not clearly marked, because that's kind of important for you to know, how it lays out, or at least really close to where the line is. And another huge thing is if it has been surveyed. If it hasn't been surveyed in today's day and age, you really need to have it surveyed. And usually in states like Kentucky, even Missouri, when they haven't been surveyed, when you do have it surveyed, it usually pisses somebody off. It shouldn't, but it does, because usually the neighbor who's been using up to a certain fence line thinks it's theirs, but then the survey says it's 20 or 30 or 50 feet over. So just be prepared for that. I mean, it's just a reality in today's world. And a 193 acre farm could really be, 205 acres, or it could be 175 acres. I've seen it on several of our farms where we've made out really, really good on most of the surveys. But I knew that going in because I talked to foresters and people before that, so I knew like a local forester or DNR employee who does forestry is going to be able to tell you where there's big sections and small sections, where you're going to make out better or worse. So just keep that in mind on getting a survey.
Now I think it's just mead. I don't think they come in here and planted a bunch of pines. They planted anything that grew fast. They planted sycamores, cottonwoods, all over western Kentucky.
Tornado zone right there, man.
Yeah, the ice storm. Of course, we had an ice storm in '09 that did a lot of damage.
I don't suspect there's much in the way of timber.
You'd be surprised, like these pines. I've got a guy that's got a mill in Sebring, and they'll pay the landowner about $10 a ton for pine trees, and you could have 75 to 120 tons to the acre. So if you had 100 tons, it'd be about between $1,500 and $1,600 an acre, okay, after the timber was cut. Now they didn't clear cut it, obviously. They clear cut it. That's what they're right. But if that house wasn't on this place, this farm would have already sold.
Yeah. Yep.
And it would bring somewhere, like I said, between 1850 and 9.
All right, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the home here, just because I don't want a half-hour video, but there's a lot of things that you want to look at when you are looking if there's a home on the property. Things like this, like drainage, you want to make sure there's proper drainage. You want to check out the septic system, the leach field, the deck, you know, how bad a condition it's in. This particular spot here, right here in the yard, would make a beautiful, beautiful pond spot. This is a perfect pond spot right here. You could see all the low brush there. Clear some of that out. This is where all the water is running, right down here. Okay, and back to the house. It was a full-time home, but it was a log cabin. It was a very nice home. I'm not sure of the age, I don't recall, but it was built in 2 parts. You'll see here in a minute there's a really nice sunroom. But you want to look for appliances, you want to look for utilities. It's got a really, really nice deck out back here. You want to check the condition of the deck. You know, is it wood? Is it composite? Are you going to have to fix it in 3 years, or is it going to last 15 or 20? Beautiful, beautiful view back here. The thing with these beautiful views is you sometimes fall in love with them so much that you tend to overlook things that are going to cost you money later on. So it's important to take your time. So this is the add-on sunroom. It is fully heated and air. It has its own separate unit, so it is good that way. It's basically living quarters. And now down to the basement. It had a bonus shower, bonus washer, dryer, utilities. But one of the important things you want to look for in a basement is that it's not leaking anywhere. And they've had tons of rain down here, and there wasn't any water down here, so it was a nice and dry basement. Which is what you want. And then you want to figure out the water source. This was on city water. You got a sump pit right there. You know, you want to know how the basement drains. If they have a drilled well, you want to get some details on that, the pressure tanks, etc. Here you want to make sure there's no mold in the basement. You know, this concrete just looked a little funny, so I mean, I just went up and checked it up close, and it was just a different coloration, that's all. So this is a really good and dry basement. This has a workshop in it, which was beautiful. This is under the sunroom, so having a full basement doubles your space, which is really nice when the home is smaller. You know, look at the walls here. You got, most of them are poured, but then this exterior wall is block. Not sure of the reasoning. I mean, I did ask, but he wasn't sure. So I'm going to wrap up the home here, but there's so many things to consider on a piece of property. But if you do have a home on it, you're also going to be in better shape for getting a mortgage, at least for the home part of it. Okay, and the pole barn, I think it was a 30 by 40, but it only had like a 6-foot door. So I couldn't fit any machines in there, any tractor, anything like that. And now I'm basically taking some measurements here to see how much I could raise it if need be. And because the walls were made so short, you're really limited. You'd have to tear the whole end of this thing apart just to add a higher overhead door to get a tractor in there, or anything of decent size. So that's just something to keep in mind when there are bonus outbuildings, how useful they're going to be for you in the long run. Because right away, if you hire someone to do all this, you're looking at whatever, 5, 10, 12, 13,000 bucks, depending on what you want to do. Okay, and so this farm I am going to give about a 7 out of 10. It has a lot of good features. There were dogs barking, so I drove around to find the house where the dogs were barking, and it was actually a pretty nice house. And they didn't drone on and on and on. They'd bark and then they stop for a while. It's 193 acres. The asking price is $525,000, which is always negotiable. Always negotiable. So me and Mrs. Kapper are taking a pass on this one. But if this was a hunting camp, this would be perfect. A really, really good hunting camp. So I'm going to say a 7 out of 10 on this 193 acre farm. And if you wanted to see it, I'll put the link in the description of the Whitetail Properties website. And you could check out this and any other ones if you're looking in Western Kentucky. So stay tuned. I looked at another property the next week after this. I hope to see you on the flip side. Kapper out.